Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the World IA Cafe series, speaker series. Thank you for joining in today. We have an excellent webinar for you, and I'm sure you will immensely enjoy it. My name is Rupa Mishra. I'm an associate professor at Rutgers University. I manage and teach in the user experience design and product design concentrations in the MBS program. I'm also an active member of World IA Association. The topic for today's webinar is balancing human and machine agency in AI-augmented experiences. Sounds fascinating. The speaker for this interactive event is Silvia Podesta. She's based in Europe, I think Copenhagen. Am I correct? That's in Denmark?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was in Denmark a couple of years ago. What a beautiful country. Sylvia is strategic designer with a background in UX and service design. In her work at IBM Client Engineering, she helps clients co-create innovative solutions with a human perspective at their heart. She has also authored a book on digital design for small businesses. There are so many things that she has done. I think it is best to put her LinkedIn profile link in the chat, and that's what I will do. Okay, let me find the chat. What happened? Not open for questions? Oh, where did it go? Okay. Okay. So also, I would like all of you to know that we'll be recording all the speakers in this World IA Cafe series. The videos would be available on World IA's website. Let me put the website link here in the chat. It's a great organization to network and meet people from all over the world. If you are interested, please do join the organization. Every year we host the World IA Day, and this has been going on since 2012. If you have questions, you can ask Andrew, who is here, and even our co-president, Grace, is here as well. The format of the Cafe Speaker Series is this. The talk is about 45-50 minutes, followed by 10 minutes Q&A. So please don't hesitate to ask as many questions, depending on the time that we have. Also, I would like to remind you this is a great opportunity to network and connect with one another. If you like, you can share your LinkedIn profile link in the chat. Let me put mine. I will also share my department's website link if anyone is interested in our UX or product design master's programs. Enjoy the webinar today, and now over to you, Silvia.
Thank you, Rupa, for the lovely introduction. I really hope to live up to the expectations. So thank you for connecting. The topic of today, I'm going to talk about agency, which is a quite fascinating topic to me. It is definitely not new in the UX discourse, but definitely the recent massive pickup of understanding of and debate around the AI by the general populace, we are seeing also that worries are kind of spiking around the ability of users to retain control over their experiences when AI systems are involved. And we are seeing actually experts are split around how much room for maneuver we will continue to have as these systems become more and more powerful and more intelligent. Why does this matter for us as designers, as information architects? Well, because decision-making autonomy, agency. These are all attributes that we tend historically to associate to good user experiences. And while I was researching on this topic, I came across this fun fact from the California Privacy Rights Act. In 2020, they listed a definition of dark pattern, which goes verbatim: a user interface which is designed or manipulated with the effect of impairing user autonomy, decision-making, or choice. And if we look at the 10 usability heuristics, the 10 principles that dictate how good user experiences should look like, we can see that at least 4 out of 10 of these principles are centered around this idea of giving users control. And also many references have been made to agency in studies around social media platforms, and namely around the connection between user engagement, algorithmic power, and content. And research shows that the use of agency enhancing affordances, things like liking, sharing, commenting, but also basic customizations on social media platform kind of increases the persuasiveness of, or the perception of persuasiveness of the messages online. And all of this, to me, is testament to the importance of agency in the design of good experiences. And so what I'm going to do in the next 40 minutes is to try to unpick what could be the implications on user agency, on human agency of AI, and what also designers and information architects should be paying attention to from now on. Agency is a quite complicated notion. In philosophical terms, which I think are quite spot on for the present discussion, the definition of agency is the capacity of an actor to act in a given environment. And there is an important word here, which is actor, which usually we employ to define or to indicate human beings, or at least a form or living entity. But when it comes to AI, this actor becomes artificial. It can be a digital assistant, it can be a companion AI, and these, I think, are the most obvious and conspicuous forms and use cases of AI, or at least forms of AI that we can more easily understand, we can more easily relate to. But we tend to forget sometimes, we all tend to forget sometimes that AI has been around for quite some time in different forms. Primarily in the last decade, it has kept its head down, but quietly revolutionizing businesses, the world of business from behind the scenes. And I'm talking about things like automating business processes, making workflows more efficient, more effective, and more fluid within enterprises, things like accelerating research, anticipating disruptions. Common use cases are fraud detection, risk mitigation, but also the whole world of shopping experiences online, so recommendation systems and social media as well. In all of these examples that I just described, the actor is often practically invisible, and certainly it isn't anywhere near to being human, and in some instances it barely has a front-end user interface in the canonical sense of the term. This complicates things a bit because it urges us, designers, information architects, to kind of rethink the user journey, take into account the artificial agent, and kind of design carefully the interplay between human agents and artificial agents. And if you are designing for AI-powered software and you produce AI-powered software, you are very much concerned with this interplay. You need also to cater for the needs of the artificial agents, so to speak. To make an artificial entity an actor in a user journey is problematic from a design perspective, because it kind of throws off many of the assumptions that we have been taking for granted for at least 40 years of designing software. First thing first, AI systems are probabilistic systems, as opposed to deterministic systems that we might be more familiar with, because AI kind of produces what's called generative variability. Same prompt, the same input might produce different outcomes. And that kind of goes against that principle of high-level invariance, which is so intrinsic to a good design and good information architecture because it's connected to the notion of consistency. Similarly, the AI is, I'm not seeing a part of my screen because I can't move the side, but anyways, I think it is what I was going to say, that AI is time bound, meaning that a common analogy of AI is to toddlers, to kids, because these systems kind of evolve over time, they develop over time as they learn from the context, as they learn from users' input. And therefore, there's always this certain aura of uncertainty around how and what they're going to be in the future and what their outcomes are going to be in the future. And this has implications from a design perspective, because as the system changes, so do the interaction of users with the system. And if the outcomes change, also aspects in the user interface design might change, and in the way we organize the information on the user interface. And I'm going to give you an example of that a little bit later. Obviously, there is also this competitive aspect, meaning that AI is competing for our agency. In fact, AI is designed to do some stuff on our behalf. It's precisely designed for that, and we shouldn't forget that. And another thing that we should forget, and it's actually a little bit throwing off not all our design rules, but a big part of the way we design is the fact that data play a very important part, if not the core part, actually. And this brings many issues, things like bias, things like trustworthiness, things like explainability and ethics into the design process. All of these things, the combination of all of these factors is enough to raise concerns about the ability of users to retain power over the choices and over the decision making, and the fear is that that could lead to poor user experiences and obviously unintended consequences from a human and ethical standpoint. And while I do think that these concerns are legit and are also very much welcome, I also think that we should look, try to put the issue into a different perspective. And the first thing that I really want to invite you to reflect upon is that the fact that AI, any AI system is de facto a tool. And as a tool, it is supposed to augment human capabilities rather than displacing humans, or at least it should be like that. It should be developed to be exactly like that. And this is a cornerstone of what goes by the name of human-centric AI, which is a community of practice and research that kind of aims at preserving human agency and trying to balance that with the potential of the technology to benefit the whole ecosystem. And this is important. When we think about AI and human agency, the first thing that we think is who's on the receiving end of AI's decision, which is the end user. But when we are talking about, when we design for AI systems, we need to have a holistic perspective and think about the ecosystem of stakeholders that kind of revolve around this system, and that's very important. Also, that concept of balance, which I am throwing into the discussion a little bit often, is very important because user agency really is a double-edged sword, or it can be a double-edged sword. And I learned a lot about this in a recent project that we've made here in Denmark. This is a recommendation system that is based on a decision optimization software solution. The client is a company, is a scale-up in the subscription beauty sector. Each month, this company would send a goodie box with 5-7 items to the customer base. And they need to choose, the teams need to choose these 5-7 items out of an inventory, out of a warehouse. But given the number of items in that warehouse, the possible combinations would be counted in the number of hundreds of thousands. So it was a beast of a workflow and an excruciating effort for those teams to kind of determine what could be the best possible combination according to a triple perspective. One is the profitability of the box. So you need to understand what is the right product combination that kind of meets the price point, but also and probably the priority was from an inventory management perspective, so to avoid things like overstocking or unsold items. And that was essential for them because they wanted to scale up. So inventory management was a huge problem at the time. And the last perspective is, of course, customer satisfaction. The imperative was also to keep into account things like product rating, brand rating. So something overly complicated for a human to do, they were doing that manually, and kind of creating a box would take, if not weeks, if not 1 month or a couple of months. So that had to change in a way for them to scale up. And so the idea was, let's create this decision optimization solution, which will kind of serve a client team with the right suggestions about what could be the best possible combinations according to this triple perspective. But we soon realized, as we were developing this model, that this was a very complicated model because there were so many business parameters to observe. And because of that, adding too much personalizations, adding too much opportunities for users to control, to edit the results, that would have result in a kind of impairment of the system and in an inability of the system to kind of provide the most accurate and the most relevant recommendations. So what we did from a design team was kind of imagine different kind of user experience scenarios and then discuss them with the clients and try to understand which of these scenarios would be the non-negotiable. So in which of these scenarios would be important that the users would retain decision-making and the ability to intervene on the results or to change the outputs of the system. And we tried to keep these non-negotiable scenarios to the bare minimum to not inficiate the efficacy of the model in the first place. So this is to say that sometimes user agency per se in AI-augmented experiences can be detrimental to the whole purpose why you are implementing AI in the first place and offset the benefits of implementing AI in the first place. And the last consideration, taking the discussion a little bit further from what I just said, if we look at the history of digital media, digital experiences in general, it's fair to say that successful value propositions have been always revolving around this idea of empowering users. And this has gone, you can take two different approaches to that, which apparently go in opposite directions. On one hand, you can empower users by simplifying the journey. And that means that you make the journey easier, you make it smoother. And that means, stripping them out of some responsibilities, of some steps, automating some parts of this process in order to make it really faster and convenient. Don't make me think. That's the mantra. We have been clinging upon that for a very long time. But on the other hand, you also have the opposite approach, which is you empower users by giving them more to do, which might be more added value kind of tasks, but definitely novel ways, novel responsibilities, or novel ways to do something. And we have examples everywhere. Social media it introduces new ways for consumers, for the audience to become more protagonists of communication processes by giving them the option to become content creators. And we can argue that everything that's happening in the digitization of public administration, things like healthcare or the tax services, all of these things are aimed at empowering citizens with the option to take care of their own personal matters, of their own digital identities, obviously sometimes complicating the journey because it's adding more responsibilities. And financial apps are another great example to me because they really opened up a new world of financial autonomy by providing opportunities for decision-making in an area that prior to their existence was practically exclusive to financial advisory services and definitely was less accessible to the general people. So all of these very twisted argument is to say that, yes, AI can erode some of our decision making, but if we design intentionally for AI augmented experiences, there is plenty of room to add new value, to infuse new value into digital experiences. But one key point to achieve this value is to kind of strike that balance between delegation and control. So between automation, which is driven by the system, and active decision making, and ultimately that's to say a balance between human and machine agency. And what we should aim for is this form of collaboration between the two. We might call also a healthy co-agency. That could be a good way maybe to define this kind of mindset. So the question shouldn't be exactly how we can support and how we can foster and can prioritize for human agency on AI experiences, but it should be more how we can design new ways to foster this co-agency, this co-creation and collaboration between the two. So the idea is to really transform digital experiences when it comes to AI into spaces for where this collaboration can take place, and so kind of go beyond that idea of digital experience as mere places made up of information. This is more, it's a more dynamic and more interactive kind of notion of digital experience that is really surfacing thanks to AI. So our goal as a designer is to obviously help build AI systems that work well, but in order to do so, you need to kind of make sure that AI system is able to perform its task efficiently and with efficacy, but at the same time providing the tools for users to use this AI and understand this AI quite well. And I'm going to give you some quickies. Obviously, the topic is really vast, and also maybe it's not the whole field is not in its infancy, but it's in adolescence, so it's really developing, and many things are really in progress. So I just selected something that I really found useful. Before that, I would like to share also an idea of how an information architecture of an AI system look like. I'm using information architecture in a slightly different meaning than to what we intend when we talk about information architecture in the design realm. In an IT context, information architecture is, you can see it as a kind of high-level concept framework that contains the building blocks of the information layer, which within an enterprise is supporting all of upper layers, the business application layer and the user experience layer. And when you are a designer or an information architect, you are going to be involved, you're going to be concerned a lot with the upper layers of this schema, so with the user experience layer and the business application layer, but obviously the job you're doing will be much influenced by what's happening behind the scenes, so what's happening in the layer of data and in the layer of data governance. And so it's important in our job that when it comes to AI, that we take a holistic perspective, and not just that we focus on the user interface per se, but we see the user interface in its connection with what's really happening behind the scene, because this is what really makes or breaks the whole system. And the interventions, I just explained that to kind of point out the intervention that I'm gonna, and the points that I'm gonna discuss now kind of encompass both layers, so the innermost layers and the upper layers, the layers that are most visible. Starting from the search experience, one of the things that AI is most known for is its ability to support information retrieval, particularly on large collections of documents and data. A typical use case is the call center use case, because agents usually rely on a knowledge base, on a huge knowledge base to kind of answer to common customer questions. but sometimes they do struggle to sort through the vast amount of resources available. So what you can do in these situations, you might deploy generative AI or foundation models, machine learning capabilities to quickly and very reliably come up with answers to frequently asked questions. This example illustrates that the value of AI system very often lies in this ability to support a particular type of information needs, which is finding the right thing to say, finding the right answer. It might also be a few good things to say. But definitely AI is very well known and is very effective in kind of highlighting what's relevant to you. So by nature, it lends itself a little bit less to support those situations where you want to have an exhaustive kind of research, where you want to look for everything. The added value, what you appreciate AI systems for, is to really help you either come up with the very right answer or to come up with a selection of results that might be relevant for the search that you've done. And if you're looking at some application like Midjourney, the way it operates is exactly that. It gives you, for example, 4 possible outcomes out of a myriad of possible artworks. Now, these are some use cases. But there are other use cases, and not necessarily all use cases are the same and all users' needs are the same. In some situations, you might also think about adopting a kind of a soft transition into a new kind of experience, because you don't want to disrupt the way users get the job done, the ways users are more familiar with to look for information and to deal with information on the page. An example, this is a case we had with a media newsroom. The idea was to help investigative journalists to find relevant documents, relevant kind of information sources to craft compelling stories. So the plan was, we are going to implement an AI that is going to scout huge public archives and kind of surface what would be the best, the most newsworthy documents, kind of sparing you all the manual efforts to check every document day in and day out. And that actually cut down massively on the research effort of these people and helped them make time for more creative tasks like writing the article or elaborating upon the idea. But design-wise, there were some dilemmas and there were some considerations to be made. First thing first, one thing that you need to ask yourself in these situations is how narrow should the selection of the AI be, and how many information needs should my layout be supporting? As I said, in some cases, you might, particularly when you are at the very beginning of a project like that, your AI system might not be super accurate because you just launched it. And maybe, as I said before, AI systems are time-bound in the sense that do develop over time. So at the very beginning, they might not be highly accurate because they haven't got much user input and much context to learn from. And at the same time, and because of that, you don't have much trust from users. So the question that you need to ask your users is, are you trusting this system enough to kind of serve you with the most relevant content, or would you rather continue to do not to leave any leaf unturned? Because what they were doing when we took this project, these journalists, they were going through that huge table of results that you are seeing on the left image. And that was their way to sort for information. They would make a query and they would have an awful lot of results. And what they would do, they would scan very quickly through that table, each row standing from one particular document. And they would try to kind of detect by comparing all the rows, some entities that would be that would signal that the document could be interesting. That could be entities, could be companies' names or people's names or relevant keywords that would kind of be cues that, you know, in this document, there might be something juicy. And so I might want to download this document. So they would download the document and then they had to read through the whole document to kind of find out the right information. Now, we wanted to get rid of all of that. We wanted to change completely all of that and kind of offset all of this to the AI system, and then provide users with just a small selection or kind of the most relevant content for them to focus on. And in this ideal situation, you might think about designing a complete different layout. You might want to get rid of the table and to present the relevant document, for instance, with rich content cards that maybe are more usable, are definitely more engaging. You might kind of fit into them all the entities, because we also, with the AI system, we would extract all the entities, the relevant entities from the document. We would also use generative capabilities to do summaries of the documents. So a layout with cards would probably be more appropriate in that kind of situation. But then there was the dilemma. Maybe at the very beginning, these people would be more comfortable in having both. So having these cards and the table, or maybe we just continue with the table. We are just rearranging the table and sorting information in a better way, making the table more readable, adding the relevance score, and kind of organizing the information better, but on the table. This is to say there is no right or wrong, and I'm not going to tell you what we would do, because this is an ongoing project. So and obviously the layout is going to change, but that is really the point. It ties back to what I say. AI systems are time-bound. They do change over time. The output change over time. And therefore, these has implications also in a way users might want to organize the information on the page, because they might trust the system more, and therefore they might want different ways to interact with the results. The example of the newsroom is the perfect segue into the next topic, which is user feedback. What better way to kind of promote user agency in AI-augmented experience than to provide users with the ability to influence directly the outcome and the development of the AI systems itself. In this particular case, the example of the newsroom, we just added in the prototype that we made the option for users to feedback a particular result, and the system would learn from that feedback. So that's a good way to include users and the human feedback into the AI loop. And this is particularly engaging from a user's perspective. It really promotes engagement, and it really promotes also a kind of sense of ownership of the system. It really is a co-creative mode. We have been talking about research. Let's talk about balancing human and machine agency when it comes to the outputs, the results of the AI system, what the AI system is producing. And this comes down to providing users with the tools to kind of act upon results. This is very much appropriate for generative AI applications, but not just that. But yeah, it is mostly seen on generative AI applications, whereby you have two different modes to add users control over results. On the one way, you have an explorative mode, whereby you give users the option to explore the realm of possible, to kind of play around with what is possible to produce with a particular AI. And in this direction, we can find, for instance, I think it's DALL-E or Midjourney, the filter gallery, but also the way actually all of these text-to-image applications kind of encourage users to play around and to test out and to query for different prompts. And then you can get users to kind of get into fine-tuning or optimization kind of mode. And that is when they choose a particular artifact, a particular output, and they refine it, they perfection it to kind of get to the more definitive kind of version. And if you want, you can look at these two modes also from the lens of creativity, because it really matches the divergence and convergence kind of mode. So you do provide creative tools to users to act upon results in these two different kinds of modalities. And I think the modern applications are really rife with examples from the Surprise Me in DALL-E, which really goes into that kind of explorative direction. I just want to inspire my users, but then you've got all sorts of optimization tools that can span simple editors to co-pilots that allows you to write code or to rewrite blog posts, articles, and things like that. And what's relevant is that you can also kind of plan for a different agency on those tools. For instance, the liner tool on the blog post, it just appears on my screen and all of a sudden, and it just takes action on its own. And so that's a whole new level of AI agency. So yeah, you can have the same kind of reasoning around agency also when you develop these tools. As I said, this is very much relevant for generative AI applications, but you can apply the same reasoning also to kind of traditional, so to speak, AI. This is the case, the same case that I gave before, the beauty company. This is the way you have this exploratory mode in the sense that you provide users with an array of combinations, but then from this array of combinations, you also provide some tools for personalizing, a little bit editing these combinations. So it's more or less the same kind of mind model. The way you present the AI on the interface can play a massive difference in how agency unfolds on the balance of agency unfolds on your interface, and also it promotes engagement, and it can promote connection also to the AI. These on the screen are different modalities of AI instances on IBM products, IBM software products, and this is a collection which is curated by our design team, and it's an ever-growing collection. Obviously, as more and more software are rolled out, the more feedback we are going to get from users. But as for now, we can just confidently say that these different modalities kind of encourage different behaviors from users and also encourage a different degree of kind of connection and engagement with the AI. For instance, if you invoke the AI as a call-out modality, or if you use it as a ambient modality, these are kind of light wave forms of AI. They're very discrete, but at the same time, they're less interactive because they're light wave. They can't support too much interaction. Whereas if you go into a kind of spotlight modality, which takes up a lot of your screen, that's really a gateway for users to start to interact and to play with the AI. And again, it really depends on what you want to achieve, and the relationship that you want your users to have with your application. The last point, which is perhaps the most important, is that of explainability, which is definitely a key issue nowadays, and because it is connected to the possibility to create AI systems that are really trustworthy, that are ethical and human-centric. And explainability really is it's all about providing users with the tools, with the information and the data they need to understand, to make informed decisions about whether to trust an AI system and whether to trust the conclusions that these AI systems has provided. It's really important that people can get what they need to understand if a certain conclusions is right, or it might be wrong, particularly if that conclusion affects them or affects their livelihood, or things like the employability status or the credit trustworthiness. And the reason why it's also becoming a huge talking point, particularly for business, is that it really fosters explainability of the AI, really fosters trust when these AI systems are put into production. And it has a huge impact on the bottom line of enterprises because of the direct reflection on things like legal compliance, regulatory risks. So it is really, really important. And the reason why it is connected with the topic of agency is that it really comes down to kind of empowering users to understand whether a conclusion is fair and what they can do about this conclusion, providing also with the tools to kind of challenge this conclusion or to opt out from a particular system or from a particular scenario. And that's really, really important for us designers to understand how we can kind of translate this explainability into user interface assets, because particularly for end users, but for any kind of users, the interaction with AI happens on the interface. So we need to understand how we can provide these explanations in a way that are easy also to understand and to digest to different kind of users. And this is an interesting case, is a thought experiment in its own right. It has been conducted by one of our teams, and they took this very extreme and fictitious scenario, an extreme use case where they imagined this algorithm that would be able to determine on the Titanic the likelihood for each passenger or the Dreamliner to get a life raft during its sinking. So it's an extreme use case. It's completely fictitious, but the reason why they chose that, and they used actually real data from public archives, is that because it's easy to design for these things, maybe on an extreme use case, also because the bias, the inherent bias of such a system is quite obvious. And this was a nice experiment also because it allowed them to explore all the different facets that kind of contributes to make the AI model explainable on an interface. And there were many lines of inquiry that this case brought to attention, things like the compliance, the ability for users to challenge the results, the aggregate, the opportunity to create an aggregate score that kind of spans different KPIs or different kind of measurement requirements. And some things that came out, and I think one of the most important things that came out from this experiment is that when you want to design for explainability, you need to understand what your stakeholders really are and map them out. Understand that different personas might have different needs related to explainability. They might want to see different information, and you really need to think about explainability as a multi-layered information systems. The analogy with the onion that has been made in this project is quite useful to understand, because not all people, if you think on a typical AI system, you might have 3 different personas. One could be a data scientist, one could be the end user, which is actually on the receiving end of the conclusion of the algorithm, and then you have a regulator. These 3 people have different needs, and they might need different kind of contents, different kind of data, different kind of explanation. So it's really important that you adopt this kind of progressive disclosure kind of approach in designing for AI, so that different people can access what they need and maybe in the right order. And again, as I said, adding tools for users to challenge maybe a particular conclusion. But also other thing, when you think about different knowledge domains, which are also different business domains, the requirements for explainability might change. For instance, one very typical example, if you design for AI explainability in healthcare, almost always you will need a combination of visual assets and textual assets for experts to understand, healthcare experts or scientists to understand why an AI has come to that decision. In some other instances, you might have just textual explanations, or you might have complete different kinds. There's the very fascinating research that kind of highlighted the efficacy of conversational assets for explainability. And that was the case of this experiment they did. They created this Allure platform. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically is an application that allows you, it's designed for kids. It's an environment where kids can actually play around with the Kubrick's cube, and there is a chatbot, I should say digital assistant, which is providing explanations about the moves on the cube in a very conversational way, and that has proved to be one of the most effective way to kind of provide communication. This is really fascinating because, as I said before, explainability is one way that can really support and foster user agency in AI augmented applications, but at the same time, to design for explainability, you might want to resort to kind of more interactive and more engaging kind of assets like conversational interfaces. Ultimately, what you want to do with explainability and with user agency in general is to come to foster a kind of culture of critical thinking, critical agency on AI augmented experiences, whereby users have the tools to kind of understand why a decision has been made, what they can do about it, and they avoid to falling into that trap of relinquishing all of their judgment, all of their decision making to a system. And this is a funny example, a little bit tragic. For a lawyer that relied on ChatGPT to file a court brief, and that brief was rejected because it was full of unverified and completely invented information. And those are the dangers when you really rely on the system. And what really struck me in this case is that the poor lawyer said, I never used ChatGPT, so I didn't know that it could lie or it could invent, and that is a case of hallucination of the system when the AI comes up with results that seem very plausible, but actually are completely invented, completely not grounded in any possible truth. So to conclude, the key takeaways that I would like to leave you when we are talking about ensuring human agency, user agency on AI augmented experiences, think always in terms of collaboration and co-creation between the human and the AI system. Really is the synergy that makes all the difference when it comes to create good user experiences in this realm. Another thing to keep into account is that the scope for information architects really goes beyond the front end, and more designers and information architects will be involved in understanding what is going on behind the scene, and will be asked to intervene also in what is the data layer, the data governance layer, infusing human-centric kind of practices into those layers as well. Agency is important, primarily because it builds trust in the system, and trust is a precondition for AI solutions that are equitable, that are fair, and that are easy to understand and transparent, and that can be safely deployed into production, and can safely benefit society and the enterprise ecosystem at large. And also always take into account the specificity of each particular use case. There are no, I mean, I've given some indications, but obviously I didn't want to give kind of very consolidated rules, because it's really important. I think many use cases are very like one the other, but I think there's always a uniqueness to each of them, and it's really important that we continue to do our user research, understand what are the specificity of each individual case, because the application of AI and the application of agency and the balancing of a human and AI agency on these experiences really is context dependent, and we shouldn't forget about that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you once again, everyone, for joining in. And of course, a big thank you to Silvia for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you for listening and connecting. Thanks.